Okay, YouTubers, welcome to what I hope to be a short presentation. I just want to return to the chemtrail aluminum boycott. This is part two. I want to just quickly go a little bit more in depth and explain why we're targeting aluminum and how I arrived at this idea of a boycott. Now, let me just begin with the beginning, right? The story begins in 1924 when IG Farben, a German chemical manufacturing company, began receiving loans from American bankers, gradually leading to the creation of the huge IG Farben cartel. In 1928, Henry Ford and American Standard Oil Company, the Rockefellers, merged their assets with IG Farben, and by the early 30s, there were more than 100 American corporations which had subsidiaries and cooperative understandings in Germany. The IG Farben assets in America were controlled by a holding company, American IG Farben, which listed on its board of directors Edsel Ford, president of the Ford Motor Company, Chas E. Mitchell, president of Rockefeller's National City Bank of New York, Walter Teagle, president of Standard Oil New York, Paul Warburg, chairman of the Federal Reserve and brother of Max Warburg, financier of Germany's war effort, Hermann Metz, a director of the Bank of Manhattan, controlled by the Warburgs, and a number of other members, three of which were tried and convicted as German war criminals for their crimes against humanity. In 1939, under the Alted Agreement, the American Aluminum Company, Alcoa, then the world's largest producer of sodium fluoride, and the Dow Chemical Company transferred its technology to Germany. Colgate, Kellogg, DuPont, and many other companies eventually signed cartel agreements with IG Farben, creating a powerful lobby group accurately dubbed, quote-unquote, the Fluoride Mafia. At the end of World War II, the U.S. government sent Charles Eliot Perkins, a research worker in chemistry, biochemistry, physiology, and pathology, to take charge of the vast Farben chemical plants in Germany. The German chemist told Perkins of a scheme which they had devised during the war and had been adapted by the German General Staff. The German chemists explained of their attempt to control the population in any given area through the mass medication of drinking water with sodium fluoride, a tactic used in German and Russian prisoner of war camps to make the prisoners quote-unquote stupid and docile. Farben had developed plans during the war to fluoridate the occupied countries because it was found that fluoridation caused slight damage to a specific part of the brain, making it more difficult for the person affected to defend his freedom and causing the individual to become more docile towards authority. Fluoride remains one of the strongest antipsychotic substances known and is contained in 25% of the major tranquilizers. It may not seem surprising that Hitler's regime practiced the concept of mind control through chemical means, but the American military continued Nazi research, exploring techniques to incapacitate an enemy or medicate an entire nation. As stated in the Rockefeller Report, a presidential briefing on CIA activities, quote, the drug program was part of a much larger CIA program to study possible means of controlling human behavior, end quote. And I might add real quick, folks, that when they talk about the American military continued Nazi research, I'm going to show you a screen capture from a lawsuit against the DoD, Pentagon, and CIA, where that's part of the lawsuit. The ones that experimented on our soldiers were Nazis from Operation Paperclip, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. The quote-unquote dental caries prevention myth associated with fluoride originated in the United States in 1939 when a scientist named Gerald J. Cox, employed by Alcoa, the largest producer of toxic fluoride waste, and at the time being threatened by fluoride damage claims, fluoridated some lab rats, concluded that fluoride reduced cavities, and claimed that it should be added to the nation's water supplies. In 1947, Oscar R. Ewing, a longtime Alcoa lawyer, was appointed head of the Federal Security Agency, a position that placed him in charge of the Public Health Service. Over the next 3 years, 87 new American cities began fluoridating their water, including the Control City in a water fluoridation study in Michigan, thus eliminating the most scientifically objective test of safety and benefit before it was ever completed. Okay, here's from the next clip from some more information. All this was sent to me by DeBumpin' Ugly on YouTube, so very much appreciated here. Let's look at this next bit I screen captured from another website titled American Supporters of the European Fascists. And I'll read what's relevant in here to the chemtrail aluminum boycott. A number of prominent and wealthy American businessmen helped to support fascist regimes in Europe from the 1920s through the 1940s. These people helped to support Francisco Franco during the Spanish Civil War of 1936, as well as Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Some of the primary and more famous Americans and companies that were involved with the fascist regimes of Europe are William Randolph Hearst, Joseph Kennedy, JFK's father, Charles Lindbergh, John Rockefeller, Andrew Mellon, who is head of Alcoa, banker and Secretary of Treasury, at least was at the time, DuPont, General Motors, Standard Oil, now Exxon, Ford, ITT, Alan Dulles, later head of the CIA, Prescott Bush, National City Bank, and General Electric. It should be noted that businessmen from many countries, including England and Australia, also worked with the fascist regimes of Europe prior to World War II. The fascist governments were involved in a high level of construction, production, and international business. IG Farben, a German company, was the largest chemical manufacturing enterprise in the world during the early part of the 20th century. As such, the company had many holdings in a variety of countries, including America. The American holdings of IG Farben included Bayer Company, or Bayer Corporation, General Aniline Works, Agfa Ansco, and Winthrop Chemical Company. IG Farben was critical in the development of the German economy and war machine leading up to World War II. During this time, IG Farben's international holdings, along with its international business contracts with companies like Standard Oil, DuPont, Alcoa, and Dow Chemical, were crucial in supplying the Nazi regime with the materials needed for war as well as financial support. So right there, folks, we're making the connection already. Nazi Germany, IG Farben, Alcoa, aluminum, fluoridation, okay? And also, let me back up real quick again because American military continued Nazi research, okay? That's important, and Alcoa is the supplier, we know, of materials as well as possible financial support for the Nazi regime. Now, this next screen capture is from that lawsuit I told you about, where 7,800 of our veterans are suing the CIA, the DoD, and the Pentagon for this bizarre experimentation, some really macabre stuff that they were basically tricked into. They were misled, and they did experiments like septal implants to control human will and behavior. Okay, all sort of crazy stuff. And a lot of the guys suffered long-term effects from it. But the point being here, if you look at this next screen capture, it's from those court papers, those documents of that lawsuit, and here it says, number 8, the experiments involving human subjects were one of the key beneficiaries of the recruitment of over 1,500 scientists and technicians from Nazi Germany in, quote-unquote, Project Paperclip, some of whom played a pivotal role in, e.g., in other words, the testing of psychochemicals and development of a new truth serum. Over half of these recruits had been members of the SS or Nazi Party. The quote-unquote paperclip name was chosen because so many of the employment applications were clipped to immigration papers. Okay, now I'm making the connection here, showing you the Project Paperclip and that these scientists were brought back. Some of you already know this. Now look at the next screen capture from that same document, this lawsuit, 7,800 veterans suing the DoD, Pentagon, CIA for some bizarre, sick experimentation when you really read these. And I've got an article on this as well on my website. I'll put a link to it. It says, number 3, defendants and that is the DoD, Pentagon, CIA. But with those paperclip guys, remember now, these Nazis came back over and they were involved in these experiments. It says defendants' human experimentation program was far-ranging and had many purposes, including, by way of example, the following. A, and I underline this, to develop non-lethal but incapacitating agents that could be disseminated by airplanes in all environments. Okay, let's let that sink in for a minute. And if you look down the bottom of this clip, it shows where they did neuron surgery, electrical shock, drugs, hypnosis, septal electrodes to control human will and behavior, explore levels of various chemicals that would produce casualties, man brake tests. I mean, just crazy stuff. But that point A is just, jaw-dropping blockbuster to develop non-lethal but incapacitating agents that could be disseminated by airplanes in all environments. Okay, I'm making this connection for you guys. I want you to understand why we're boycotting aluminum and Alcoa. Alcoa is our target. And this next clip, I just found this the other day in the newspaper. Minnesota Nazi uncovered after 6 decades in U.S. The guy was a Nazi SS commander of a Nazi SS unit, blamed for burning villages filled with women and children, right? And they just found him the other day. He's like 80-something years old. Yeah, he's an old man, but the point being is these guys are still around. And their descendants, whoever their kids, are probably in the same positions of authority now, conducting the same, like father, like son, sometimes. Anyway, not all the time, but sometimes. So I just want to let you know the Nazi thing, it's when someone uses it, not even referring to our government, but to paperclip and these experimentations, it's a legitimate, you have to use the word Nazi because we drew from the Nazis. Okay, the next screen capture, Club Bilderberg. You guys know that Alcoa meets there every year, right? The Alcoa representative is at Club Bilderberg every year deciding the future of mankind, and that includes a lot of chemtrails and a lot of fluoridation. Okay, my next picture is some chemtrails. And, folks, the target is aluminum. Alcoa is the world's largest manufacturer. I just made their connection. IG Farben, Nazi Germany, disseminating incapacitating agents by airplanes in all environments. And so I ask you, I beseech you, as one human to another human, please. I understand at times maybe you have to buy a roll of aluminum foil or you got some beer, you're headed to the beach. I get that. Hey, not a big deal. Just more often than not, try as hard as you can to avoid buying aluminum. Buy a glass bottle when you can, even plastic if you have to. I made cookies today. My mom made chocolate chip cookies. I brought some of the batter back home. I did it on my cookie tin. No aluminum. No aluminum. Straight on the cookie tin, and I will scrub it and wash it gladly to stop chemtrails. So that's the end of this presentation. Thank you for joining, and thanks for joining this chemtrail boycott.